Welcome to Reinventing Education, a podcast for teachers, parents, and students who desire to reinvent education in order to better serve individuals, society, and our world. Perspectives, practices, and new ideas. I'm Rob McLeod. Armin Sieber of the Integrale Tagesschule Winterthur in Switzerland listens for and responds to new ways of facilitation. He serves learners and supports personal as well as organizational growth. Together with a team of highly committed teachers and staff members at Integrale Tagesschule, he is on the journey to explore what future-oriented, development-rooted, teal-inspired education might look like. We discuss the unique structure of the school, the imagined barrier of school life versus real life for students, and how structures within a school can be adapted and modified to best meet needs that the students have. Links to the Integrale Tagesschule's website can be found in the show's description, but more importantly, Armin has curated a series of resources and PDFs for you to explore. The link to those files, a Dropbox link, can be found in the show's description as well. Enjoy. I guess first of all, Armin, I just want to say thank you very much for joining Brennan and I this morning.
Nice to be with you.
There's a lot of different threads I want to follow up with you to introduce the idea of what makes your school so unique. We had crossed paths recently in Hungary, and it felt like when you were describing the student-teacher ratio at the school, it seemed like everyone assumed they must be mishearing you. So before we get into some of the philosophy and the relationships, maybe could you introduce us to the student-teacher ratio, which makes your school so unique?
Well, we are a rather small school with about 30 to 35 students. It's a secondary school, so grades 7 to 10. With the 30 to 35 students, we have about 25 people in the staff. So it's not all our teachers. There are some members of support team, but it's quite a huge number. That makes people really go, well, that's not possible. But it's linked to the fact that no one is allowed to work full-time in our school as well.
And it seems like the school had a real evolution from maybe where it intended to start from, or what it may be intended to serve from, and what it's become. So maybe you can describe, like in 2018, who are the students who are coming to your school? Who are the parents who are attracted to your school?
If you send your child to a private school, then there are reasons because you have to pay for a private school. If everything works out fine, then there are mainly no reasons to send your child to our school. So we, as the school is a unique one, maybe we are a place where unique students meet. Children that do not fit into the system of public school, or the public school system does not fit to the students. So there are always reasons, and the reasons vary very broadly. So maybe there are high achievers who are not able to show their abilities. Maybe there are these 3 or 4 letter students, ADHD, ADD students. Maybe it's Asperger's syndrome. In the last couple of years, more and more students coming from stationary psychiatric institutions find a way in our school to re-enter what others would call a normal life. So it became more and more complex in the last couple of years with bandwidth of people we try to deal with.
Yeah, and it seems like your school, from what I've heard you say, finds ways to really stretch across that bandwidth. And it seems like, can you give us a sense of what are some of the challenges to find such a differentiated approach? Because it sounds like you as the school, you as the system, is the really flexible entity here to meet where the students are at.
Mm. So maybe in saying yes to that every human being has the right to be the person he or she is at the moment, then this is the starting point for a learning organization, because you don't know ahead what you will be confronted with. And where we became a learning organization with the first bullying traumatized student or family, because a solution-focused approach didn't match. So we got into nonviolent communication. The first Asperger syndrome student brought us into spiral dynamics integral in order to understand and to communicate accordingly. Now we have borderline diagnosed adolescents, and again, here the integral approach is very much helping to see what kind of framework can we build and invent in order to accommodate these students.
And I really get the sense that you're really meeting them where they're at now. One of the kind of themes we've begun to explore on this podcast is the idea that school seems to, or at least conventional school, has the agenda of helping students get ready for the workforce, helping them get ready for citizenry, helping them at times to get ready to navigate their own lives. Could you speak to any of those, how you're meeting the students now in school and ensuring it's a rewarding experience and a meaningful and an impactful experience, and transforming them, and how you see the school is getting them ready for either the next stages of school or for life in broader society?
Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the first steps in our school is to unlearn what you think who you are. So if you were not successful for 7-8 years during your school career, it's not really helping to look forward to the next steps towards the future. So unlearning sentences like, oh, you know, I'm not good at school and please don't take it personally. There's no sense in explaining something to me. So helping or facilitating a change of your own mindset is often the first step. And well, if you go to the last step of what is our aim or goal, so we try to prepare our students for a more and more complex world, which we don't know how it will look like. So we are trying to prepare our students for their future and not for our past. And that means we are always, I'm not sure, just good enough for now, our decisions, and we have to correct when we find out this is not helpful. And therefore, we include the students as well as competent members of our team when we take decisions, how to change the school or what to learn.
Yeah, can you give us a glimpse into how student voice impacts the school itself?
Well, as an organization, for a couple of years now, we try to become more and more sociocratic as an organization. So Sociocracy 3.0 is now not completely installed, but mainly. So we have circles when it comes to learning or planning of events, and we have one inner circle of the students, which is called Solution League. And the Solution League is participating in questions of school development together with the whole circle of staff members and including board members. So they have a voice in even as important as all the other voices have in our organization. So, and they learn how these processes go, how the circle meetings go, and they take over responsibility for these circles.
I don't know a lot about the actual structure you were talking about there, or the kind of approach to these kinds of meetings. But what I find really interesting there is that there is a system in place to support the students in engaging with the school. And it sounds like, from what I'm picking up on what you're saying, it's sort of like you guys are working as coaches or like master magicians, just finding the right system that would serve the right needs to make this an authentic experience for the students, or have them take authentic action, but yet still supporting them in being able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of years ago, about 10 or 12 years ago, I spent my summer holidays in trying to find a new way of operation of the school, because it was so challenging at that time. And I came out, I had very clear ideas how it will work. That was the last time I thought that it's possible to have, as a single human being, an idea how it works when you work together with others. And now the idea is that as a learning organization, everyone has a say, and there's no right and wrong in black and white anymore. So human beings are fascinatingly complex. And sometimes it's enough to have one human being to be fascinatingly complex.
I'd love to get a sense of like the nuts and bolts of this, because everything you're saying, it's like lighting up my interest in sort of the integral or teal or developmental kind of value. But can you give us a sense of what a school day or a school week or a month might look like for some children? I'm already getting the sense that it's not going to look the same for everybody, but if you were to walk someone through a day of what a child is coming in contact with at your school in terms of activities or relationships, what does that look like?
Well, first of all, we today we speak of adaptive intelligence as the driving force of the framework. So it depends on who you are. So if we developed some shortcuts of spiral dynamics. So in our school, all students are introduced to the model of spiral dynamics, and we can speak in short terms of the colors. We developed symbols for the levels, and everyone knows that no human being is blue or orange or green or whatever color. So we are always a mixture, and the circumstances, the context, and defines more or less what is the appropriate framework. So there are students in adolescence that need quite a firm framework of blue, orange. So if you are a student, and we call it this as basic learners, if you see yourself as a student as a basic learner, and you say, yes, it's helpful for me if you are very strict and you tell me what I have to do, and you give me feedback on if my progress is okay enough for the moment. So you will have a teacher that acts like this. So nowadays, so we start our lessons in the morning at 20 to 9, but you can come to school from 8:30 on. There's always someone there. So if you would like to prepare something, or if you just like to chat with other students, you come over. So it's floating in the mornings. As a student, you are a part of a team. It's not. We do not have classes so it's a mixture of abilities and ages. So it's learning together, learning from one another, and stepping ahead. So at 20 to 9, there's still some schedule. So for the next 2 hours, I will study mainly French or math or something like that. And according to your learning and preferences, you might be in a different math class. So mathematics we experience is somehow different than other subjects. In math, we differentiate the learning types or the experiences of the students. So if you are really not sure, if you appreciate if there is more or less a one-on-one kind of teaching, then this is one group of learning of math. Which doesn't mean you can't. It's not the question of the level of math you're working at. It's just the way how you gain security and you feel safe in trying out things that you never did before. Then we have a group that likes to go to school in brackets. So you have a teacher that tells you what to do, and there's a blackboard even, and exercises all do together. That's more or less the only part where in our school where school happens that way. But you can choose for that because some students feel safe in that environment. Then we have the self-learner group. So if you are more or less one that says, okay, please let me do it. But if I get stuck, I'm really happy if there's someone to support me. There's the coach. But don't give me the solution. Just give me a hint because I want to be proud of myself after. And then the final group is I'd like to study science and math in a complex environment. So maybe you will design a house and you do all the calculations and in a very big project, and sometimes you find out, in order to make this kind of calculations, we need more input, and maybe you work with Khan Academy or something else, or the teacher is allowed to give helpful hints how to solve the problem. So these are the 4 groups, and they're open. It's not you start in this group, then you will stay in this group. You're invited to see, well, maybe the other group now is the better place for you to learn math. This is the most detailed way how I can describe that we try to be adaptive, and we include the students to find out what is helping them in order to learn and go forward. And in a smaller scale, this happens in all the subjects, and the rather cognitive subjects are in the mornings. And since the founder of the school said this school has to have a special focus on expressive arts, all the afternoons are the afternoons where the students come to school are focused on expressive arts.
And there are afternoons students don't come to school?
On Wednesday afternoons, they can come to school, but usually the adults are alone.
Mm-hmm. And is that specific to the school, or I'm assuming that's in a part of the Switzerland school system?
That's the Swiss style. So that they can spend time together with their friends from other schools, which is important as well.
Mm. That's such a adaptive system to meet each individual student and their learning style and their needs within a subject. I'm really curious about all of these staff members you have, if there's a common thread between the kinds of people you attract in terms of staff, or if there's beliefs about teaching that the staff at the school has. Could you give us any insight to what I'm assuming is a pretty incredible group of people to work with?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really fascinating. In the beginning, well, if you have a school that develops into these approaches, you go through a very green phase. So we have been a very green school as well. And in a green school, you would like to have green teachers doing green things. And that was not helpful. So, and we experienced that.
What was not helpful about that? And for some of our listeners, we've thrown out the word green, or we've used the word sensitivity, but just out of curiosity, what was not serving the school from that place? What issues did you run into?
Well, if connection and harmony is imperative, you avoid conflict, you avoid strict rules, and therefore the students really liked coming to our school. But the learning part, the progress part, was not meeting the standards we had, or the expectations of the parents as well. And it's not either or. And the next step was to include and transcend the important parts that we should live or walk our talk as adults as well. So if we have a diverse team, it's easier to facilitate a constructive way to deal with diversity for the students as well. So now I think we have the common thread in our team members is that they are fascinated by the fact of their own personal growing and the collective growing, and to support growth in the students. But they come from different approaches or aspects or portfolios, well, whatever. It's not the goal that everyone works the same way. When we have someone new come to our school, they spend 2-3 days at our school. They work together with us, and they don't have to bring along already the trainings we expect them to have after 2 or 3 years, but they should have the motivation or the longing for their own growth, to get into it and to feel interested and not overwhelmed, to start learning, be learners themselves. And in order to have this kind of learning organizations, we need adults, we need staff members that like to learn, love to learn themselves.
Yeah, I think, and maybe just to clarify, what does it mean for a school to be a learning organization?
What does it mean? Maybe it's learning how to listen and not to know. So schools or teachers are trained to know the answers, and we unlearn that, start learning questions. that's the solution-focused approach, which was the starting point for our school, or when I came to this school. So the client is the expert. So when the student is the expert. So if you, as a teacher, are not the expert, what's your role? And then it becomes very interesting and challenging. So you ask questions. What kind of learning is best for you? If you remember all along your way, okay, how could we do more of that? And not, I exactly know what you need. That's like a fractal in a one-on-one encounter. And if you just zoom it out as a whole organization, it's the same. Not knowing, but asking questions and finding out what ways work and do more of it. And if it doesn't work, do less.
What does a staff meeting look like at the Integrale Tagesschule?
Interesting. As we are this kind of organization that we are, and I may have the title of headmaster or principal for the outside world, because the outside world is not yet able to deal with the sociocratic organization. So all I know is I am not responsible for the staff meeting. So I know when it starts, and we are there. And the person who is in a position of energy, who thinks, now I feel like I will be the appropriate person to lead the staff meeting, is starting. We are working with an online platform called Trello. You might be familiar with it. So all the circles, the student circles, the teacher circles can write some inputs for the agenda, and you will see in the first part you will see all the staff members with computers or tablets in front of them, because the person who is leading the meeting is now attributing time for what we call online discussion and information. So we do not give everyone we don't read the information for everyone, so we think they are able to read. So first part is read the online information. Second part is now go to the online discussions, and this is a very strict time frame. If we need more time because it's more complicated than we thought, so we have 5 more minutes for the online discussion, and you see everyone contributing to the discussion. So this changes while writing, and then we decide what of the online discussions do we take into our meeting to discuss together. And sometimes there are some topics that are clearly and exclusively for live discussion. And what is one of the most impressive parts in our staff meeting is the final part. So when people come and want to know how we function, this last part is oftentimes very, very touching for them, because the last part, we call it the diamond round. So teachers are invited to share what they observed, what is really functioning, or where the resources are, where progress happens. And this is just something that if you listen to someone else talking about what successes he or she was able to observe, then your mind starts scanning your observations, and we finish our staff meeting, which we have every week for at least 1.5 hours. So the last quarter of an hour is just exchange of success stories, not our success stories, but observations of success stories. And you leave the staff meeting energized, because, wow, I wouldn't have thought this could be possible with that student. And this is really a difference when I compare it to what staff meetings in public school meant for me.
Yeah, can you give us just a small glimpse? Maybe what are some of the biggest differences you've seen having had a public school experience, or I'm assuming a teaching experience there, versus what's happening here? It sounds like you're in two alternate universes from where you were once to where you are now.
Yes, that's for sure. I think being a teacher is really challenging, and you have high expectations in yourself. You want to do a good job, otherwise you wouldn't be a teacher, I suppose. And it's so shaky because there's something happening during recess, and your whole planning is grounded afterwards, and you don't know why. You're not used to ask why. Is it not functioning the way I planned it? So you have sometimes I experienced in myself, you have 3 options. And one option is I wasn't prepared enough. The second option is these are not the students I really need in order to be successful. Please change the students. And the third option is these are the wrong parents, because if they would be the right parents, so option 1 is not very helpful for me, so it's option 2 and 3. And then I talk about these. I talk about the students that are not doing what I want them to do. And other teachers are so happy to join in, because they have the same problems and difficulties and challenges. And 80 to 95% of the time, we're talking about things that are not successful, and it takes a lot of energy. And that was one of the parts where, when I came into this school, it was the same. 90% of the time talking about things that are not functioning. So I invented a tool or a process in order to change the attention and the focus. And that was 18 years ago, and now it's a part of the natural culture in the school to focus as well on what is functioning, what is helpful.
I don't know if every teacher who's listening to this right now was just doing that same head nodding, but I feel you just hit the core of, I think, the largest challenges for teachers when we shift the idea from, yeah, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but yeah, it's these kids and the parents and you know, the administrator and a few of the other teachers here maybe too, that, yeah, they're just really screwing up my ability to be successful in doing what I already know I need to do. I think you've just hit a huge piece of the puzzle there. One last thing, Brendan, hop in at any time, but
Sure.
The one last element that I wanted to make sure we addressed from your talk when I heard you in Hungary at the Integrale European Conference was your inclusion of students, which you've already addressed in terms of the organization and the running of the school, but also the inclusion of the students in every aspect of the school and not just lip service. And I mean that especially with the creative endeavors, like the school website. I noticed you have student art featured there, the marketing materials, come through student input. Maybe just as one last bit before Brennan hops into the discussion here, could you just, why is that important? Why is that important to have the students' creative contributions play such a central role in the look of the school?
Maybe it's not mainly the result and the showing of it, but it's the importance of including students in their personal growth with their abilities, the possibilities to express themselves in arts. And sometimes fascinating things happen in arts, and you see the signs of change, fundamental change in arts first, and slowly afterwards you see it in the whole person. So I think expressive arts is still an important part in our school. So if it is important to see the results of their journeys, we do it as a showcase, and at the same time, it's important for them that they feel like responsible for what is shown, from what is seen from the outside, and they are really loyal to our school. They appreciate going out and sometimes challenging teachers when they go to some when they are able to explain how we work, and they come back and are proud of themselves, and they are proud of what we are doing. Because if you are in our school, you may lose the ability as an adolescent to see what are we doing here. It's so different. This is not a normal school. In an appreciative way, students say this is more than school. This is like life. What we're doing here. And some others say it's just puzzling what we are doing, and they're longing for more schoolish behavior from us, from the adolescents in the beginning. But when when they are part of how is the school seen from outside, they are more connected to what we do together.
Yeah, I was going to just jump in there, because one of my questions is very similar to that, almost the flip. I was really interested in how you negotiate the limits of that sociocratic kind of space, in terms of the fact that some of the people there will be just more experienced with education. Some people are older and possibly more developed in different ways. And I was just wondering if there were any obvious challenges in that negotiation of trying to live a genuine sociocratic kind of life within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't think you can be a sociocratic organization. It's a permanent becoming, and therefore it's a journey. And if it's a journey, no matter where you join the journey. So this is fascinating to take this journey together with the students, with the parents, with the board members. No one has experience in doing that. So it's new to all of us, including myself. And I think as a teacher, I always thought I'm the best teacher in me when I'm not needed anymore. So if students really take this attitude of and this belief in themselves that they can learn and grow. And as in my role as a head teacher or headmaster, I didn't forget that. But I was for years I was not able to be a good headmaster in terms of I'm not important anymore, because the intelligence or the knowledge and the wisdom is within the system and not within a person. And with a sociocratic approach, it's fascinating to see that more and more the wisdom is shared on all shoulders, and I'm becoming less and less important. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I guess kind of branching out to the parents of the students, how does the school, because in the day-to-day operation, I guess the parents aren't really there physically for much of the time. So how does the school kind of ensure that the parents are on board and that they're working in a way that's going to kind of work in harmony with what the school is trying to carry out, rather than somewhat maybe even undoing some of that work in the time outside of school?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have talks before a student comes to our school. This is important, and we explain openly our approach. Students have a one-on-one coaching every week based on our reduced model of spiral dynamics, and the parents are invited to. They have access to the minutes or the protocols of the coachings, so they can be part of it. And every second month we have something we call ITW coffee. So it's Saturday morning, 10:30 to 12 o'clock. Parents can come to our school, have a cup of tea or coffee, and we have a presentation of one element of what makes our school unique. So they get training in nonviolent communication, they get a training in solution-focused approach, in spiral dynamics and integral approach, which many of them say is important for them in their professional life or within the family as well, because sometimes our students can go home and say, well, if you tell me I should not go out right now, what is your need behind you saying no? So it's very interesting, but it's powerful at the same time. And the adults need to they come to us and they have they would like to learn new ways of communication as well. It's not us telling the parents, well, it would be a good idea if you come to us to learn how to communicate in a proper way, but they would like to learn because they see fascinating changes within their children.
Fantastic.
One of the other parent-child connections, Armin, I would love to hear this kind of anecdote. You had also shared this with me of the student parent conferences. Mm-hmm. And I think it looks somewhat similar to maybe some of the student-led conferences I know that Brennan has been involved with in the past, and I've tried to bring into some of my own work, where you have the traditional parent-teacher interview, the parents come in, and in my execution of it, I've played with having the student involved, sharing some of their work, the student sharing some of their opinions. When I heard your version of it, the length of it and the structure you provide students with, this just seems like it's the whole next level. You're like the Jimi Hendrix of the student parent conference. Could you just give us a glimpse into that? Because I think that was a really important connection between what the school and home life is doing as well.
Given the fact that most of our students have not been successful So the teacher parents conference is heavily loaded for the parents when they come. And we learned that if we, with the best purposes, we were not able to change the energy completely as we thought it would be important. So we took the parent-teacher student conference and designed it totally student-led. So the student is the host, welcoming the parents. Sometimes we have representatives of schools or outside coaches, people like this. So, and the students are coached beforehand. We have a mind map where it is where they a guiding mind map that tells if you start welcoming the people and you don't feel quite safe in taking the role, just ask, for example, for whether they would like to have still water or sparkling water, and don't bring the water beforehand so that you can go outside the room to the kitchen and bring the water, and take as much time as you need in order to breathe deeply and come back in your role as a host of the talk. And then explaining as a host how the talk will develop in role, and then for the first quarter of an hour to 20 minutes, the student is talking about progress, what has changed since he or she came to our school, or since we had the last meeting. And if the student gets stuck, he always knows that his personal coach is sitting at the table as well, supporting him or her with questions, but not interfering in what the student is saying. Then the student invites the teachers and coaches to add on what he or she said. Then the student invites the parents to add and share their point of view, and finalizing after about 1 hour or 1.5 hours, with the scaling questions. If these kind of meetings can be very helpful, successful, and positive, that this would be on a scale at 10, and 0 would be the opposite. So the student asks his parents, how would you say on a scale from 0 to 10 was this talk we just had? And for many of the parents, it's such a totally different experience. We need handkerchiefs in these talks, because they are overwhelmed to see what their children are able to share about their own personal path and progress.
Wow. The theme that I'm getting here is the line between school and life, as you alluded to earlier, seems to blur when we reach school as a learning organization, or a teal school, an integral school, a development transformational school. I don't really have a question here, Armin. I guess it's just like, does the school have an idea or a definition of its reach, of where you say, no, this is where the school ends and the student's life begins? Or is that always up for inquiry?
Well, as every human being is unique, there's not one answer. So we have students who, while they're with us, don't show much connection. And as soon as they get out of our school, the first week they're out, they come back to have lunch with us because they know they can come back anytime they'd like. And yes, it's definitely blurred, and we don't think this is it. It's an evolving process. So we would like to work more closely together with the parents, and the introduction into professional life. We already have a sophisticated program, but we would like to do even more on that. And what we started 15 years ago is it's really a gift to work together with a team, even though there are days that are totally challenging. You're overwhelmed, and you know you are not alone in our school. So, but behind there is something like a missionary idea to support public schools in taking steps towards this kind of approach. And we share openly what we are doing, like as an open source. And for the last 15 years, we work together with other schools, and we share, we do trainings, knowing that it's not the model, or this is it. We know how you should do it differently. We share the fascination of what it means to become a learning organization, and to instill this longing in teachers and schools.
I kind of had a question there. You touched on it there, of you working with other schools to try and share some of your kind of philosophies, maybe even methods. And some of the people we're going to be speaking to, I guess, are what Rob has kind of defined as hackers. There are people who are maybe individuals working in mainstream schools who might want to start implementing some more of the kind of developmental, transformative philosophy within their own teaching and within their own school. Is there any kind of anything you would say to someone who approached you with that kind of question?
I think the journey starts with your own openness to learn, to grow, to find aspects that are important to you beyond knowing what is right and what is wrong. And there are tools. If you here in Switzerland, for the first time, we have in the German-speaking part a curriculum that is overarching all the cantons. So we had about 25 different structures of schools. So if you moved from one canton to the others, your child had a totally different school system that was not compatible. So for the first time, we have that. And it's a competence-based curriculum. And competence-based is sounds nice, but is quite hard to get into it. And now with this given curriculum, new curriculum, there's an option for growth of teachers and of the school systems as a whole. So this would be a moment to reflect on what are we doing, and how could we find out if we are doing the right things, and what is it then? What is a competence after all? And we are working since the year 2000 on a competence-based framework, and we developed some competence grids and rubrics, and these can be very helpful in order not you as a teacher are just a measuring instance, but there's a common framework where students can reflect where they are at and what their next steps of learning and development could be. And now the role of a teacher becomes more the role of a coach. And this change of becoming more the coach and believing that students want to learn and have the motivation to face challenges, this is changing the whole approach. And we see it happening in public schools, or if you call it in those mainstream schools as well. This can start within a single classroom, or with a group of teachers, or as a school.
Sure. Because I guess you're talking there about external expectations as well as the internal ones that you... earlier you kind of said that you didn't feel the school was meeting the expectations that you had at that point. And so I guess for a school that has more of an independent nature, that it makes a lot of sense. But then you have the external pressures coming from government level. I think you kind of touched on a little bit there how you deal with that. But is there some kind of level of expectation that your students, when they hit 18, are taking state-wise standardized kind of testing, or is the nature of your school allowing you to kind of bypass or negotiate that system?
No, we are an official. We need to can you say we have to respect the curriculum, the official curriculum. Given that we go far beyond that curriculum, but sometimes we have inspectors coming to our school, and they want to see whether there are the manuals that are mandatory, and if the timetable really shows the number of lessons we should have. And yes, we do standardized tests like all other schools, but we are not training for the test. A test is a helpful sign that in connection with this outside world that is not functioning the same way as we do internally. Where are you at the moment, and is that what you think is okay for you? And all in that age group, your parents are important still, and in order to have options for your future. Do you see that you have options, or are there changes to be made in order to have more options for your career? So we take these common reference frameworks, and our students learn to assess themselves within these frameworks as an additional help to where am I headed to, and how do I allocate my resources.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense, because that's one of the kind of key points that myself and Rob keep coming back to. And you spoke earlier about the school being more of a green, I guess what we described as sensitivity, almost deconstructivist maybe place. And yeah, it's good for me to ask that question to schools that maybe at one point felt that way, to, well, you can't avoid that kind of ambition mindset and I just like the way you described that it becomes more of an internalized negotiation or reflection process. That seems like a really healthy way to deal with a necessity of the system. Mm-hmm. I guess the last thing I wanted to say was that I really appreciate the ways many times you've talked about the vulnerability or the honesty, or the fact that you don't know and you're okay with that, and that's important. And I think that's a real deep-seated difference to many of the educators I've spoken to, and myself as well in certain points. It's something that I'm still aiming for in my own teaching practice and in my own life. So I really appreciate the amount of times you've stressed that point in the discussion today. So thanks very much for that.
Yeah, I'd like to turn that into a question, which I think is one of these questions that's central to maybe where school is headed. What place does the unknown have within your school?
Assuming that there is something like a homogeneous school self. I don't know really. I know that it is important to stay open, to be curious, connected to yourself and to the people you're working with, and you need courage to go on, because you don't know, because it's not given what the next part of your journey will show. So the not knowing is the best place for a coach to be, and I think it's the best place for a school to be, while having a good foundation in terms of willingness and abilities to deal with the unknown. So professionality is not in giving the answers, but in knowing how to deal with not knowing. So, and whenever I have the chance to introduce people to our school, I say, well, that's what I can tell you now about our school. But be sure, in half a year, the school will be different, and I don't know where it will be. But the mindset and the consciousness behind will guide us. But we don't know what tools, what changes, what approaches will be new. But yes, it's a place for individual and collective growth. Sometimes I summarize it like this. So, we don't know where growth will end, or that's just a fact. Yes, it's important.
Armin, thank you very much.
Awesome.
You're welcome.
If this episode of Reinventing Education was insightful or useful to you, feel free to reach out and connect to us on social media. We enjoy having your perspective. Join the conversation about what reinventing education might look like. Feel free to find us on our Facebook page, Reinventing Education Podcast, and join the discussions there. From Brendan and myself, thanks for joining us.